Usually when talking about Oklahoma, we can draw a line right down the middle and compare it east to west. Historically, geographically, culturally, economically, this makes a lot of sense. I've lived in both eastern Oklahoma and western Oklahoma. To me, the differences are pretty stark. So let's take a look. But first, I'm Marcie Billen. I am a real estate agent here in Oklahoma. Each week, I release free content just for you so you can learn all about what it's like to live here in Oklahoma and about real estate. If you're thinking about buying a home or selling a home here in Oklahoma, would you give me a call? I would be thrilled to help you. Eastern Oklahoma is really green, and you'll even notice that in the foothills of the Ozarks, especially around Tulsa, that area is going to be called green country. That's actually where I grew up. Eastern Oklahoma actually includes parts of two different mountain ranges, the Ozarks and the Ouachita Mountains. Typically, you're going to see more rainfall in eastern Oklahoma. The lakes and the rivers in eastern Oklahoma will be full most of the year, besides like maybe a couple of months in the summertime. It's also more humid in eastern Oklahoma. Western Oklahoma looks vastly different. Western Oklahoma has wide open plains and prairies. It's a slightly drier climate. There's less vegetation, most noticeably a lot less trees. This land is going to be wide and flat, so you're going to see crops in these wide, flat fields probably with irrigation systems on them. Western Oklahoma does include a mountain range, and it is one of the craziest mountain ranges I've ever seen. I think these mountains look wild. This mountain range is called the Wichitas. The largest city in eastern Oklahoma is going to be Tulsa, and you'll notice lots of remnants of the 20th century, otherwise known as the early 1900s. Tulsa exploded during that time, and that was the time of the oil boom for Tulsa. Western Oklahoma's largest city is Oklahoma City. It's the state capital, and it's also the largest city in the state. It's taken quite a bit longer for Oklahoma City to kind of grow into itself and develop culturally. Eastern Oklahoma in general has a higher population density. That's probably because there's more rain, more natural resources. So about 60% of Oklahoma's population is going to live on the eastern side. Western Oklahoma tends to be less densely populated. So about 40% of the population lives in Western Oklahoma. In a lot of areas in Western Oklahoma, it's going to feel incredibly rural. Say that word 5 times fast. And it's going to feel very agricultural, where sometimes in eastern Oklahoma, it doesn't feel that way. Remember that Oklahoma's population totals at about 4 million people, and that is the same population as the city of Los Angeles. Eastern and western Oklahoma developed very differently during the 19th century. Eastern Oklahoma was once entirely included in what was called Indian Territory. So Native tribes were moved into eastern Oklahoma. Probably the one that you know about is the Trail of Tears, though that is not the only thing that happened. But there were a lot of policies, federal policies, that led to this. Tribes still have a huge presence in eastern Oklahoma as a result of this. Western Oklahoma still has many tribes, but it may be more closely associated to the settlers and the agricultural boom. Western Oklahoma had several land runs where people raced to claim parcels of land, and some families still own this land from the late 1800s. Eastern Oklahoma and Western Oklahoma ultimately have slightly different economies. I would say that one of the major unifiers, though, is going to be oil or energy, the energy sector. The oil boom of the 1920s rocketed Tulsa to the international scene, and they're still drilling all over the state. The climate of these two areas is going to be pretty different, although sometimes to me it feels very similar, so I don't know, maybe I'm just used to both. Eastern Oklahoma is more humid than Western Oklahoma. It does rain more in eastern Oklahoma typically. This year was a little outlier, but most of the time it rains more in eastern Oklahoma. Technically, it's a humid subtropical climate on the east side. Summers are hot and winters are wet. Thunderstorms are common. Tornadoes are also common.
Come on, baby. Come on, please. Come on. Please. Come on. There it is. Yeah, baby!
I do have a couple of videos about weather and tornadoes. I get a lot of questions about that. So if you want to watch those videos, I'll throw them right up here for you. Western Oklahoma is drier. It is more arid. Rainfall is significantly less on normal years. The landscape, like I said, open plains, lots of grasslands. and those random crazy rock formations in different places. Conditions are dry, you're gonna see some of that waving wheat that you hear talked about. So they say that summers are hotter on the western side. I don't know that I buy that. I think it's just hot in general. It is windy though. It is much windier in western Oklahoma. There is nothing to break that wind. So Oklahoma's largest economic sectors are going to be energy, aerospace and defense, and agriculture. Western Oklahoma is home to several military bases like Vance Air Force Base. There's also Fort Sill, and then of course Tinker Air Force Base. So that's the largest one. Western Oklahoma is going to have a significant amount of drilling for oil. Oklahoma is actually the US's third largest producer of natural gases and fifth largest producer of crude oil. Agriculture plays a major role in both sides of the state. The largest crop in eastern Oklahoma is going to be winter wheat. And then the largest crop on the west side is also winter wheat, but you're also going to find a lot of corn and cotton and barley. So there's a lot of different crops that are grown here. You may have noticed that in the 2024 presidential election, Oklahoma was the only state in the union to go entirely red. Oklahoma is traditionally conservative, but of course there are diverse views all across the state. Tribal governments in eastern Oklahoma will often emphasize sovereignty, community welfare, and of course cultural preservation. Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Norman, these areas do tend to attract a little bit more moderate political stance. Oftentimes you're going to see that western Oklahoma may be more conservative, and this is because of energy, like the ties to the energy sector. Property rights are definitely important all over the state, and sometimes I feel like in western Oklahoma there's more of a focus on them. Cost of living is a huge discussion that I have with my clients as they move to Oklahoma. So I have entire videos covering this. Overall, you're gonna have a higher cost of living near the urban centers like Tulsa and Oklahoma City. I do see that housing prices are higher in eastern Oklahoma than in western Oklahoma, but housing prices in Tulsa, the city itself, are lower than housing prices in Oklahoma City. It's kind of wacky, I know, like it doesn't really make a ton of sense, but there it is. Ultimately though, if you're living in Oklahoma, it is much less expensive than any other part of the US. Like there are some places that are cheaper, but Oklahoma is definitely up there on the affordable side. Infrastructure can really vary a lot between eastern and western Oklahoma. On the east side, you might find better roads and more public services. This probably, like we said, has to do with the amount of water and trees and natural resources that are available in eastern Oklahoma. And then on the western side, you may have to travel a bit further to get specialized healthcare or other public services. So let me know what you think of these differences, and definitely watch some of these videos next.